And it's kind of like an encouragement for me, but hopefully also others, that life is just so much more than just flesh and blood. It's more than just
Yeah.
what we see, but there you have a soul that you got to check in, that others got a soul that you got to also like be mindful about. And
Hmm.
there's also this other saying that I usually have in my music is, there's a garden within you waiting to be watered. And so I hope that my music will always bring back to that fact. And that's kind of like my North Star, just reminding people and reminding myself constantly in such a busy world that we have a garden within us that's waiting to be watered. So we got to nurture it. We got to nurture it with love and with truth. And I hope that my songs in these projects will constantly kind of bring us to that truth.
All right, y'all. What's happening, family? This is Sherwin with Gospel Music Buzz. Make sure you follow us, Gospel Music Buzz, on all social media platform, YouTube, everything. But we're not going to talk too much about us today because I'm excited to get started with this interview. Today, we're joined by someone who's making waves on a global stage, blending R&B, pop, soul, storytelling with a voice that just connect way beyond the playlist. She started racking up a lot of love from Billboard, US, CNN, Complex, you name it, all the way across Southeast Asia, the US. She's just doing amazing, amazing things. New EP just dropped. New beginnings, crazy, crazy body of work. We're going to be getting into some of that. But listen, man, she's 20, she's on fire, and she's just getting started, fam. Let's welcome Hillary to the buzz. Hillary, what's happening?
Hi, I'm good. Thank you for having me here.
Of course, man. It's always good just to see when someone is out there just grinding and just doing what they're doing and doing it with such excellence. Because as I'm reading and I'm going through all of this, I'm like, wait a minute. She's only 20 and that voice, that soul, like where is she? What is she singing about? She just started living. Like, where is she getting this life experiences?
Where did I get all the experiences?
So let's
Uh,
let's just start with that off the bat. Like, what kind of, like, what's been your upbringing like? What kind of music was just playing in your home? Like, how do you embody this type of soul and just this vibe?
no, I love this question because I can go in so many different directions, but I'm gonna keep it long story short actually. But so basically I was born in Norway,
Mm,
and so I already had that, in my blood, and but I'm full Filipino though. But I
mm,
remember when I was like around 3 years old, I we moved back to the Philippines, and so I grew up with my grandmother.
mm,
And that was like that time where I really got to see like how the Filipino culture was, like understanding how the culture was, but also just like perceiving and consuming like music in a different way.
yeah.
Like I remember when I was like 5 years old, I would pay my grandmother, like my grandmother would pay me actually like some Filipino pesos just to entertain some grandmothers and some other
Mm.
uncles, some aunties. So it was like child labor from day one. And so I think like just having that culture and that mentality from a young age, just, having to work hard for what you want.
Hmm. Hmm.
I think that was already kind of settled in my blood, in my DNA
Wow.
from a young age. And so just having that culture, like within the Filipino culture, like with karaoke, but
Hmm.
also
Hmm.
growing in church as well. Like I was initially the tambourine girl. Like I wasn't the girl on
Come,
the
come
mic.
on, tambourine. Come on. Do I have
No,
a tambourine here? Come on now.
we don't play with tambourine girls because they're actually doing the job. So I
Facts.
was initially the tambourine girl in my church, like when I was like 7 years old, and I
Mm,
loved that. And also like, when my mom was here in Norway
hmm.
and I was back in the Philippines, like, having this long distance from your parents would be, difficult as a,
Yeah.
you know, it's difficult communicating, but
Hmm.
one way for me to kind of like express my love to my mom was through Skype, through dancing. I
Mm,
remember that I would prepare some choreography and some cover songs that I would prepare like on a Thursday because on a Friday I would call her and then I would show it to her. And so that was all like music was always
Wow.
my love language and it was always my form of just expressing myself and my way of communicating.
Mm.
But I remember when I moved to Norway when I was 8 years old,
Hmm.
I grew up in a more like, overprotective um household and I
Okay.
was very much like isolated because I couldn't like really speak that Norwegian language fluently
Hmm.
around that. So in this like in the midst of the unknown, music was everything that I had. It was the only thing that I had that was kind of like certain. Like I was like, okay,
Hmm.
I'm unsure of all these culture shocks, these environments and everything. Everything was so new, but
Yeah.
music was kind of like the only thing that wasn't new. And so I held on to that throughout my childhood. And so that's why I think I'm just like a big music lover because it's been truly my anchor.
Wow. Wow. I mean, there's so many different ways, like you said, you could have gone, but I really do appreciate just that honesty and that realness of just kind of showing us both sides. And I think, anyone that have either migrated to different countries. I was sharing with you before we hit record. Like I'm from Guyana, South America. So, I came to the US, number of years ago. And again, adapting to cultures is not always the easiest thing. You're trying
It's
to
not the
figure
easiest.
out, if you have an accent, if you don't, there's different ways, even as you're singing, as you're doing different things. So I definitely with you with that 100% for sure. But I mean, again, like you said, the way in which music of this kind of just been a part of it. You didn't even realize that at the time as you were learning choreo just to get ready for Friday. Now, we're gonna get into it. You're about to go out to tour soon. And you're gonna be I've been seeing you on socials learning a whole lot of choreo. You got your whole team with you. Says like just looking back at that little girl then and to who you are now. I mean, that must just feel really amazing just to see you were putting in the work without even knowing you were putting in the work.
No, exactly. It was like a place of preparation, but also just like it was my playground. I didn't,
Yeah.
I think like when we take things too seriously and like
Mhm.
too, just like taking ourselves too seriously, I think we
Yeah.
can lose the sight of just like, of actually just like doing it out of passion, just doing it because it's fun. And
Wow.
so that
I
was
love.
just a playground for me.
And you mentioned this kind of, growing up Filipino and Norwegian, how would you say that, that kind of shaped just your identity and music? I know you touched on it a little bit there, but what about from like writing styles when you're drawing from different things? So like I said, hearing your voice is one thing, but just lyrically and everything, I'm listening, I'm asking myself, like, again, has she lived a life before? Because where is she drawing these things from? So, how has that kind of impacted, or rather, just kind of crafted it, you as an artist?
Yeah, I think songwriting has I didn't know that songwriting was my thing until I became a songwriter, to be honest. Because the only thing that I do remember was that, thanks to my mom, really, she's the best because growing up, when I was 8 years old, she would have this um I would say like a strict morning routine that she would have and she would encourage my sister and I to do. And it was that, every time we would wake up, she was like, yeah, before you say good morning to me or your dad, or before you say good morning to your sister, say good morning to yourself. And she would give us a journal, like a
Mm,
notebook, like a journal. Then she
wow.
said, say good morning to yourself and say good morning to God. And
Come
so I
on.
remember, and so I remember like when I was 8 years old, ever since, I didn't know why or what or how, but I would just note down because she said, say good morning to yourself first as a way for you to kind of like check in with yourself. It was
Mm,
like a heart check for myself. And it was like, she knew that being an 8 year old, like you don't have that many experiences and you really don't perceive life in a broad way, but she was just like, just train yourself to write down your thoughts, write down your feelings, write down anything you want. Stream of
mm,
consciousness, just write it down. And at that time, I didn't remember like why, like I didn't know or understand the purpose of it.
mhm,
But I thank her for just keeping on encouraging me since I was 8 years old. Because ever since I've been doing journaling, and that was like the way, that was like she paved the way for me for songwriting because that's how I got to kind of process and understand my feelings and really just learn. to understand who I am. And so it really made me kind of, understand myself in a broader way, I guess. So even though I haven't been through a lot, even though I'm just 20, I feel like, I she definitely encouraged me how to just process everything.
Wow, that's so important. I mean, we're only a few minutes in, and I'm just like, this is really great stuff because the fact that she's teaching you at such a young age to, hey, check in with yourself, check in with God, like it's just grounding you and allowing you to have a place of a base to sort of just start from. And that's the same thing. I mean, I always tell folks, I'm like, listen, man, when you roll off your bed, man, I tell my kids as well, when you roll off your bed, don't just go for your phone because there's so much wildness that's out there. Like, you don't want that being the first thought that just penetrates your consciousness. You want to start from a really, a firm foundation that you can basically navigate for yourself. You start there and then you go out into the world when you've already sort of set that for yourself. So shout out to moms for
Shout out to
putting that in place.
mom.
Shout out to moms for that.
Real. Shout out to mama.
I'm curious, what kind of music did you grow up to listening in your house?
Ooh, this is a interesting question because I can give so many answers.
Mm.
Like, what I'm very interested about is what do you think? What type of music I grew up with?
Oh, snap. Look at that reverse Uno card. Oh, snap. For some reason, I mean, I songs like Mom is gonna hold you down when it comes to, some of the Christian stuff. That's what I'm feeling. But I also feel as though there's some old school there. There's some old school, whether it's some soul, some old school something. I feel like there's something else there, and that's kind of my initial thought. I wouldn't say hip hop or anything like that just yet. Maybe you should go to like an uncle house. They probably were playing the old school breakdancing joints, but I don't know.
Yeah.
What were you listening to?
Hip hop on an uncle's karaoke house, you know?
That's what I'm
No.
saying.
No, but you had something right there because I definitely did grow up with like gospel and Christian music, you know.
Mm,
But I also grew up with a lot of bossa nova. I grew up with Nora Jones, for
mm,
example. And
yeah,
then I grew up with because around that time as well, it was like the prime of Black Eyed Peas. So I
yeah,
grew up with Black Eyed Peas as well.
yeah, yeah.
But most importantly, I just grew up listening to Alicia Keys. And
Ooh.
I was just like, wow. I was so fascinated by the way that she would carry herself with so much confidence and
Hmm.
just she was just both masculine and feminine at the same time. And I was like, I want to be her. And so
Wow.
I was always like looking up to her ever since I was a kid. And that's why maybe also she somehow encourages me to, like really, um, to really be, what would I say? Like to really sharpen my skills when it comes to like
Yeah,
singing,
yeah.
performance, and being a good steward of musicianship as well.
No, no, you're right. And she always keeps challenging herself and just leveling up, whether it's Broadway plays, whether it's musicals, whatever it is.
Exactly.
Like, she always sets the
You
bar
can
for
do it
herself.
all.
So yeah, so no, and it makes sense. I think I'm starting to understand now. I'm starting to understand. I'm seeing the writing on the wall now. So jump
Yeah.
jumping a little bit into just the musical stuff, kind of going back, looking at some of your EPs before, Desperate Soul, How Is Your Soul, and New Beginnings. So is there like a common thread there? Because I'm seeing a lot of checking in here. Now that what you mentioned before, I'm like, Desperate Soul. Like, how is your soul? Like, let me talk to myself. Like, how is my
Yep.
soul today? And then this new beginning. So just kind of step me through that a little bit, but just some of the common threads to pull on there.
No, definitely. I think they all come from very real life experiences, so there's definitely a common thread. And um I would just like to start off that How Is Your Soul was my very first EP. Like I debuted around 2023,
Mhm.
and that came from a place of writing it from literally at home. Just, me, my guitar and my keys, and then I would send it to my producer, and then we would kind of like, somehow build it up and produce it together. And so it was from my very own comfort of home.
Yeah.
Wow, New Beginnings was, me stepping into my I would say like womanhood, but I'm still in my 20s. But kind of
Yeah.
perceiving life in just a wider perspective now that I'm growing older. And
Hmm.
it was written in a place and time of just in the midst of uncertainty because I was writing a lot in LA and just outside of my own comfort. And
Yeah.
so it was really like I would say it's, new beginnings is finding strength in the unknown. And so
Mm.
the common thread between those two projects is um it's basically just, because I have this saying in my identity as not just as an artist, but also as a person that it is for the soul. And it's kind of like
Mm.
an encouragement for me, but hopefully also others that life is just so much more than just, flesh and blood. It's more than just
Yeah.
what we see, but there you have a soul that you gotta check in, that others got a soul that you gotta also like be mindful about. And
Hmm.
there's also this other saying that I usually have in my music is there's a garden within you waiting to be watered. And so I hope that my music will always bring back to that fact. And that's kind of like my North Star, just reminding people and reminding myself constantly in such a busy world that we have a
Yeah.
garden within us that's waiting to be watered. So we got to nurture it. We got to nurture it with love and with truth. And I hope that my songs in these projects will constantly kind
Mm.
of bring us to that truth.
No, no, I love that. It's a garden within you that's you said that's waiting to be watered.
Watered, yeah.
And that's a round of applause for that. Round of applause for that. Round of applause for that. We can't let that just go like that. No, I think one of the first songs I actually listened from your music was, again, that was the first track on the new EP, and that's the song with Ryan Ofei, Only God. So just tell me, how did that collaboration even came about? Because you're in your side of the world, you're jumping between, Oslo, Manila, you're going between LA, you're all over. But then Ryan is in this picture as you guys are doing that. So talk. Actually, no, before you even mention Ryan, before I even get into the Ryan, which I want to do, talk about just the signing with UTA. So which one happened before? Like I want to kind of paint the
Yo,
full I want to paint the full picture because there's a whole
paint the
lot that
full
you've
picture.
done before we really like tap the music side. So let's reverse back. You were here grinding, doing tell me the story.
Reverse back. Okay, let's reverse back. So I can start off with, I was just let me just rewind a little bit because I remember I was 17 and this was the time when I was really getting into the music industry and just like learning what is a studio, what is networking, what is putting yourself out there. And so I do remember that as I was building this bank of demos and just kind of taking 1 year off to really just truly focus on who I want to be as an artist, what I want to spread as a message, like how do I want to portray myself and what do I want my music to stand for. We, like my team and I, we took this 1 year off in back in 2022 to really just dedicate that whole time to really build a good foundation, a solid foundation. And I remember that a person in my team said that you should network and reach out to producers that you look up to. And one of the producers that I looked up to was Jordan Manswell. And the reason that I knew about him was because I was such a big fan of Dylan Sinclair. And so I went to Dylan Sinclair's credit lists, and then
Mhm.
I saw Jordan Manswell, which was his producer. And so I reached out to Jordan Manswell with no hope that he was going to respond back to an artist that has never, I didn't put out music around that time. So I was like
Mhm.
not trustworthy at all or like not credible. I was still in high school around that time. But I remember that I sent Jordan Manswell a DM and then I was just like, "Hi, I'm a 17-year-old upcoming artist from Norway and then I don't have music out, but here are demos of mine." And so, I went back to school, da da da, did my exams and everything. And then I heard from him, and then he liked my music, and then he was like, "Yeah, I'm from Toronto. I like your music. Like, that's fire." And so after that, I was just like, "Oh my gosh," I somehow got connected with him. And so I
Mm.
told this to my mom. I was just like, "Oh, mom, I think I have a couple producers that I want to work with in Toronto, and a lot of them do actually want to work with me." Then my mom was just like, "Oh, okay, well." how are you gonna, sort it out with your sleeping situation there? Like how, like who's gonna be with you? And I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't know, but I don't know. I'm just gonna throw myself out there. And then she said like, okay, well, are you gonna sleep couch? And I'm like, I think so. And so I did sleep couch on a stranger's house, which was like a Filipino auntie that I didn't even know of.
Mm-hmm.
She was just like a Filipino auntie. I couch surfed at her house,
Okay,
and then
couch surf. Okay, because I'm like, when you
yeah.
said sleep couch, I'm like, it's probably
Oh, no, no,
couch
yeah, no,
surfing, couch surfing.
couch surf.
Okay,
Yeah,
got it.
sorry.
I got it. No, no,
Yeah,
no.
so yeah,
I'm tracking.
so,
Keep going,
yeah.
keep going. I don't want to
I
interrupt. Keep
was
going.
yeah, so I was couch surfing at a
Yeah.
Filipino auntie's house in Toronto when I was 17 while doing my exams. And then I was just
Mm,
like, working with these producers as well. So that's how it started with the Canada thing. So
wow.
now that I'm done with this whole Canada thing, I've kind of like established some contacts there. Amazing. I went back to Oslo, Norway, and now it's kind of like now it's 2023. I just debuted, and then I got to know that I was gonna be one of the actually before I even debuted in 2023, this big festival in Norway called Festival. It's one of the biggest and
Okay.
largest festivals out here in Norway.
Mm-hmm.
They booked me before I even released anything, because
Right.
which was crazy as well. Which was crazy around that time. I didn't understand, but I think they heard my demos and they were just like, yeah, I
Let's
think
do
there's
it.
some
Yeah.
potential in here. And so as I got booked there, it was about like 1,000 and maybe 1,500, and it was my first ever festival show.
Mm.
I just prepared I prepared a choreography, some dancing, some singing, and like I wanted to really put on a show because I love live shows. Like that's where my
Yeah.
heart is at. And so as we did this first festival, big festival, UTA was standing in the crowd, like the UTA team.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I didn't know that at all. I didn't know who they were. I
Mm.
didn't know that, I didn't know that at that time. But after the concert, they went up to my team and then they were like, who's this girl? And so and it just started from there, honestly. Like by the grace of God, it just
Wow.
kept rolling and rolling and rolling, and then it just felt right and genuine to work with them because the
Yeah.
people really cared. And so that's kind of like what I mostly care about is when people truly care. And so that's kind of like how it started with UTA. Yeah,
Man,
exactly.
that's wild. That's just wild
Yeah,
right there.
it's
Wow.
a wild journey. And then going back with, only God.
Mm-hmm.
Well, um, this is also a whole nother thing because it's such a full circle. So basically, I remember that I was just in my keyboard. I was sitting by my keyboard, and then I was like, playing my keys, and then these three lines just stood out to me, like only God can love me, hold me, feel me. And as I tried to write a song, I couldn't write a song. It was just like these three lines that just stood out to me. And then this was not supposed to be a song for myself because I wanted to send it out to producers, and I
Mm-hmm.
had the dream that it would hopefully end up with Stormzy,
Mm-hmm.
as I heard that he was doing like something gospel and stuff. And
Yeah.
so as
Yeah.
I was sending this voice memo out to producers and stuff, Jordan Maxwell was one of the people that heard this. And mind you, Jordan has been on my journey since I was 17.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the thing is, Jordan had executive produced, I think, Ryan Ofei's newest project, right?
Got it. Okay.
And so Ryan heard this, and then he said he wanted to do something on it. And I was like, stop it
Say
right now, because
less.
I'm say less, say less. And so it was crazy because it was like, it was public knowledge that I was a big fan of him. And so
Yeah.
just getting that recognition from him as well that he wanted to hop on the song, I was just like, such an honor, man, such an honor. And so it was just a full circle moment, just having Jordan Maxwell on my back, like he had my back ever since I was young, and now he's just on my journey as well.
Wow. Wow. See, there's a few things, it's a few things you kind of touched on there. One, you took a risk, you took a chance, you went ahead, you shot your shot in the DM and you were like, hey, this is kind of, in a good way, this is kind of what, this is kind of what, what I'm looking for. Hey, check out my music. And I think sometimes, a lot of times, folks feel as if, because I'm gonna get rejected because of this, because of that. I don't think I want to reach out. I don't think I want to say something. But for every, few no's you're gonna get, there's gonna come that opportunity where you're gonna get that yes that's gonna be so instrumental. And that seems to me like this yes really followed you for like at least 4 years and is still going pretty strong. Just that one yes with Jordan. So that right there was one thing. And then even the fact that you were prepared, and I love the fact that you stayed prepared even though when you had just demos, that you were called on one of the biggest stage in Norway, and you didn't, as much as I'm sure you probably had some nerves there, but you were able to get up there and you were able to do your thing because you were prepared and you were ready for opportunities to come to you. So that to me is like one of the standout thing, that hey, you always got to be ready. And it seemed like you were just ready. So you were on this big stage in Norway, like, what was that like? Just kind of walking up the stairs, ready. They're gonna call your name. You're up next. What are you thinking in that moment?
Honestly, like I remember as my team and I, as we were like in a circle and just like being gathered 5 minutes before the show, like I was crying. I was like, I cannot cry right now, but I was just crying because I was like, wow, if this is the first year of just starting off, what like the future is looking bright. And so I was feeling very, very hopeful and very motivated, but of course I was nervous. This is my first festival, and I was like, wow, people have expectations, and I don't know if I'm able to reach their expectations. So I
Mhm.
was also very, very nervous. So it was definitely a combination of both feelings, but all in all I was just feeling thankful, to be honest.
Wow. And then you get up there, it starts, and then that's it. The rest is history. You're just out here getting ready for your tour that we're gonna touch on in a minute. And you just crushing it. No, I love this. So, as your fan base just sort of grows, US, Europe, Southeast Asia, and just beyond that, how are you staying grounded and intentional? Because you came out of this phase was, hey, I was in school, wrapping up exams, crowd surfing, getting all these big opportunities. That phase is finished. You're now heading forward, you're in your 20s here, you're heading forward. Like, how are you staying grounded and intentional? And also the part two to that, when you're waking up in the morning, are you still checking in with yourself?
It's a good question because that's the thing too. Like I feel like the more that you grow up, the busier life gets, and the more excuses you'll have for not to check in with yourself. And I definitely experienced that struggle. When like especially last year when I was a lot in LA, when there was a lot on my schedule,
Mm.
schedules getting packed and everything. And so I definitely have times and moments where I slip it, but
Yeah.
I'm always thankful that by the grace of God, I always get dragged back into my values and just having that sort of just feeling that, I can't actually risk not checking in with myself. And so I always try my best, even though there are times where I definitely don't do that because I'm just very busy.
Hmm.
But most of the time, I really try to check in with myself and be intentional and ground myself. And how I do that is it's still the same routine. It's still the same recipe, which is journaling and just being checking in with myself through journaling, but also grounding myself in truth as well.
Wow. I love that. Like in the US right now, it's June is Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. And for me, even with that journey itself, like I had shied away from that for quite a while. I'm like, no, I'm too busy to do this. I'm too busy to that. But I know there was still some self work there that I needed to get into. And I started seeing a therapist, like, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago. And I try to make sure I keep my appointments weekly, that I go through and kind of still, do that work and do what you have to do. Because sometimes, like you said, you're running around, you're navigating, there's family life, there's work life, there's all these different things. But, you only get but more busy. So definitely finding time to just checking and just, sort of do what you got to do for you is super, super important. So I'm glad to see that you're keeping with that, and don't ever lose that. Um,
We're all trying. We're all trying that, yeah.
that's all we can do. That's all we can do is try. So I guess, and I'm gonna go through this a little bit faster, but what does, I guess, new beginning mean to you personally beyond the music? Because we talked about a lot of stuff, from the music and outside, but what does it mean to you, new beginning beyond the music?
This is actually a very interesting question because I feel like before the music, new beginnings came to me. Like it came from real life experience, and I had to
Mm,
pay for my words. Before even writing the songs, I had to experience some
yeah.
stuff. So, as I touched on a little bit earlier, new beginnings is basically about finding strength in the unknown.
Mhm.
And a thing or a truth that really that I always came back to when it comes to making this project was I'll bloom wherever I'm planted. And so it's basically about just knowing that you're there more to just you're there in a season, you're there in the midst of the unknown, but know that that you're there more than just to exist. You
Mm.
can't just be there and survive. You're there to flourish. You're there to nurture. You're there to grab the gems that you need to grab before it's. And so like it's there's always yeah, just to bloom wherever you're planted, basically. Like you're meant to flourish wherever you are.
Bloom wherever a plaque. Come on, man. Like you're just gonna try to slip these little sayings in while we keep going. Like let's make sure I mark that. Let me just mark that so I can go back to it. All right. I'm gonna go back to it. All right. Let me make sure I take that off. Now, music in this era is not as it was, I guess I would say, in times past, right? There's a lot of gatekeepers. There was ways that folks just never got a chance to listen to music unless you had this massive budget to getting some of the key magazines, getting some of the key radio stations and so forth. But in this day and age with social media, with the ability to create, whether it's using AI to help with your creative, if you can design, you're able to do all of that. Just you as an artist, as an independent artist, like how are you able to just continue to level up? Because I look at your content when I was preparing for this interview, I'm seeing, a lot of the routines, the choreo, a lot of just the musical, the visual, the aesthetics. Like, how are you able to just continue to just visualize and keep creating at that high level?
Honestly, I think it's just like I think it's because like people are looking for something more than just what is aesthetically pleasing. And so I
Hmm.
feel like what people gotta see and feel and hear that it comes from a real story. So I gotta package it in that way. It's there's gotta have it has to be more depth into it some type of way. And so I feel like I always come back to that when it comes to visuals, when it comes to packaging myself out there in the social media, because as you said, like there's AI now. There's a lot of stuff right now that can kind of, overlook that. But the thing is, I also feel like real music and real talent and real stories will always find its audience. And so I'm a big believer that um what was I gonna say? I was losing my train of thought. But I'm a big believer that yeah, basically like people will feel it if it's organic. People
Yeah,
will feel it and they will yeah, like those who know. And so it's just like if it's organic, like people will feel that it's organic. And if it's fake, people will see it.
of course,
So
of
that's why
course,
I just try my best to kind of like keep it real and as genuine as possible because people will feel it.
man. We got to touch on briefly. We can touch on, there's the summer tour vibes that's about to kick off. I believe it's on the 14th, if I'm not mistaken. You're starting on the 14th with the first stop. So a lot of preparation has been going into it. I see the dancers are out there. Everyone is doing their thing. Y'all just getting ready. Like, how are you? I guess firstly, I know you've been preparing, you're getting ready. So how are you feeling now jumping into this, getting ready to head back on the road here?
I'm excited. I'm excited. It's my third year now. So I'm just like, okay, now I've grown more and I've learned more. So for every year, I just soak in whatever lesson that I have and I'm just excited.
Love it, love it. Any particular stops with any particular foods, anything you're looking forward to in
Oh,
some of these cities?
man. First of all, I just gotta say that I'm so excited for this one festival, which is my first festival, which is Eya, like the
Mm-hmm.
first festival that I debuted at 2 years ago. So I'm excited to be playing here again, and I'm also very excited to play at one of Scandinavia's festivals, which is in Denmark. At
Mm.
Roskilde. It's gonna be so good, gonna be so fun. So I'm very excited about that, and as you said, I'm also looking forward to eating some Danish food because people gotta put me on that.
Y'all hit her up and recommend some of the good eats, y'all. Recommend some of the good eats for her. No, before you start to give everyone your socials and have them go ahead and start checking you out, if someone is now discovering you for the first time, what's the one song you would say they should start with and why?
Ooh. I think they should start with Fall Into Place
Mm,
because I feel like we live in an age where we feel like, okay, our future should be like this, that, and we worry so much about our future. And that song, I hope that it can touch a lot of people, just reassuring them that everything will fall into place.
wow. Hillary, you got the EPs that are out right now. Is there a full body of work that is coming at some point? You want to tease the people out, or you gonna keep on this train for now? You're gonna do what you're doing for now?
I'm definitely gonna keep it on the low for now, but
Okay,
definitely
okay,
more
I'm with
music
it.
is coming. More music is coming. It
Okay,
is.
I'm with it. As a media platform, we always got to try to see if we can squeeze out something breaking news. So don't hold it against me. I'm just doing my job. I'm just doing my
As you
job.
should. As you should.
Yeah, yeah. Hillary is not just one to watch. She's one to feel. Go stream that new beginning EP. Follow her on all social media platforms. Hillary, go ahead and give the folks your social.
Yes, so on TikTok, Instagram, wherever you can find me, it's Hillary, HILLARI, and Allison. So it's gonna be Hillary Allison, and then you'll find me. Hope to see you.
Hey, thank you.
Thank
Appreciate
you
you.
so
Appreciate
much.
you. Appreciate you. I'm gonna go ahead, y'all. Make sure you check her out. And Hillary, thank you again for being here with us today.